Alright, so I'm fighting off a cold today, kind of, so just a quick boat update for the weekend. The modeling mistakes I have for this week is kind of tiny. Thanksgiving is coming up, but we're coming back for some big hitters after that. So you guys are here for the boat though, but please check out modeling mistakes if you haven't yet. Really cool, just going over mistakes I made painting some Gundams and some stuff that I've learned. But this is what I've done on the boat this week. So I sanded every piece down and covered the bottom of the hull with a gray lacquer. This would be the military US gray for the F-15, but it was a close enough match for what I had. The wood, so these are raised panel lines. I hand primed this because I did not want to use a bottle of primer on this, so what I ended up deciding was just hand priming, kind of dry brushing primer on here, and then going in and brushing with Revell, which is kind of a weird choice you might think, but I do have an idea. So this sort of off-white, very light beige is going to be built up with oil paints. So I'm going to smear some darker browns down it, which I've done before when painting wood, and I'm really hoping that'll work out. These little structures here are actually very confusing in the manual, because it shows you what parts to paint, but not the full piece. And I think the assumption is that you leave it gray. I painted this gray. You can tell slight different gray than the actual piece itself. Maybe not, but yeah. So the gray lacquer is the essentially unpainted parts of the piece, and then the trim in the manual says it's supposed to be red for some of these upper trim portions, some of the other parts as well, but any reference picture I find is has no red on it, which is very confusing for me. There's red on the hull of the boat at the bottom, and this I'm going to measure out, put a masking stripe of tape, put the red down. That's my plan there. I really want to get a good connection, like a good solder essentially between this, and make it flush so that I can see if I can get this to float in water. The problem being is you need to feed the cables for the flag poles, for the flags, before you glue it on, because they get fed underneath in these little holes here. So I think I'm just going to have the deck painted, glue it on as best I can, sand it down, gap fill, and then repaint what I have to. I know that's an arduous process, but that's the best that I can think of when you gotta get the flagpoles on before you cement everything. A confusing thing here too, like a piece like this, so this is what I'm talking about, like 23 has no paint code next to it, so you can assume this would be an unpainted or a gray piece, and then you paint these E accents where the black is. So C would be the matte satin red that it says in the manual, but on no reference pics can I find satin red. They all seem to be a dark grayish matte, sort of blackish. And I think the issue there is that this was a manual made in 1955, essentially. This model was made in 1955, but this was reformatted in 2021. But I think that it is based on a paint configuration of the boat that just simply does not have a lot of pictures, or it was the paint code that they were provided at the time when they made the model. But as far as peace ceremony pictures and beyond, you know, into the Gulf War where this boat served, as well as into the museum piece that it is now, the museum exhibition that you can visit at Pearl Harbor, no red red on the deck. So I am not going to follow the paint code here and follow reference pictures instead. And that's my plan. Um, it might not be the best plan because it might not make these colors accurate to the loadout of the boat or the way that it's set up, because this is obviously made to be at the peace signing or just before, maybe like Iwo Jima, one of those campaigns. But see, like this piece here was coded to be painted fully in the wood brown, right? So I painted it beige, and I'll go in and add grain and stuff later, but it really doesn't look beige in any reference pictures, and it doesn't look like it's made out of wood. I wonder how accurate some of these paint codes are, because it really does get into, like, you know, like this side here of the deck is wood F, this side over here is C, which would be your matte red or the matte gray that I'll go with. And before we get into, you know, some of the individual parts, I just want to talk a little bit about getting into boat autism, because, yeah, doing research for this boat has been kind of enlightening. This is actually, honestly, a very symbolic, very emotional boat in a way where, you know, it was the point of a very important meeting that kind of changed the way Japan militarized and the way, you know, the US sees and treats Japan. But not only that, like, I just can't imagine the feeling on the deck that day when the treaty was signed. You know, you think of the American perspective of everybody all excited that the war is over, but I really have to be thinking of the Japanese people that were showing up to sign this peace treaty. Because yeah, like the feeling of deflation. You know, hopefully there was a feeling of elation as well that it was all over. But I mean, they had just gotten bombed, you know, irreparably. So it's kind of hard to quantify how that side might be feeling about something like this. And I think that's really important to think about something like this, because this boat is still stationed at Pearl Harbor as a museum, and a lot of the stuff that you'll read about this boat is very, you know, hurrah America, boo Japan, and yeah, that's a pretty valid sentiment to have about World War II. But you think of, like, the 19-year-old kamikaze bomber that almost hit the deck of the USS Missouri here, right? And you know, still essentially, you know, almost a kid, but that was war. So, getting into some of these pieces here. Another fun little fact I found is that during the peace signing, as a Canadian, this is funny, the Canadian ambassador representative signed on the wrong line, crossed out his name and wrote it on the right line, and the Japanese were not too happy about that, even though he did initial the right spots after, which is the right legal precedent. So these cabin parts I covered with the gray lacquer because I wanted like a nice glossy finish, but since I hand primed, it's just like, you know, kind of crazy. But I feel like I kept most of the detail that's important. Now, with important detail too, it's kind of weird because this is such an abstracted model. When you look at a reference picture, and I mean, this is just down to scale, but there's a lot that isn't there. There's a lot that doesn't quite make sense. These old pieces did not fit together too well, and I definitely had to, you know, file out this to be a proper, almost even little window that this other piece will slot into. But yeah, I'm hoping to then give this a black wash, maybe a brown wash, we'll see, and hopefully that'll just like pop out the details of the raised panel lines. All of these windows for the triple cannons were very uneven. This is the blue that I'll pick for the little two planes that are at the back of the boat. You can see this is how poorly hand priming this coin went. I think I've lost about every detail on it, but all the detail was pretty mushy to begin with. And yeah, these cannons were really rough for cleanup because there was fringes all at the side of them, so there are parts where I tried to peel the cannons with my hobby knife and definitely got like a kind of uneven cannon there. But some of these little pieces are so fragile. And this is, you know, this hand primer over here, very kind of dry brush job, but hopefully it does kind of add like some gradients to it, or almost highlighting. And then when I did get down the lacquer on the hull, you know, it actually did really smooth. Like you can see the primer there, and then the lacquer there. So that is a pretty smooth hull. And I can sand that down a little bit with some grit if I need. Oh. It was interesting kind of looking into this model and seeing that it does have a very bad reputation. Some people call it the worst ship model on the market. It's definitely Revell's oldest that they keep in print. I've seen people call it the grandfather of ship models, things like that. Now it's so abstract to me. You know, there's not railings on the side of the deck. There's so many missing things that to me going for perfection on this thing is not going to happen. So I want to just get paint on every part, try to do the best job I can with it, and try to get it watertight and see if it can float in a sink or a bath. I do want to figure out the rigging on that flag. I think it'll be a really fun sort of challenge there. And this is very much a nostalgia kit. I was talking to someone else and they were talking about the idea of nostalgia kits. I obviously wasn't born in 1955, so I hold no nostalgia for this kit. So it's really just fighting against plastic for about 60 hours until I get something that resembles a boat, maybe. But yeah, working at it a little bit at a time, and I'm thinking, you know, at the end of the day, I might end up just like sawing it in half and making it part of a Gundam diorama or something, like some Gundam breaking up the piece signing or something like that. I think that'd be pretty funny. But yeah, that's pretty much the ship update for the week, and it's a small modeling mistakes for this week, just about freehanding, because I don't freehand much, and I'm trying to get better at that. So, yeah, all right. Any tips on this boat, or if you've done this boat yourself, please let me know. The last boat video was really well performing compared to the Gundam stuff, so I think people do like boat model stuff or want to see more of it. And I'm really going through it with this one. So, all right, I'll come back to you with more boat facts next weekend and stuff like that. All right.